Hopefully you can see a slide that says storytelling is compelling. Can someone give me like a nod or a thumbs up that yes? Great. Okay. So, as I kind of mentioned in my intro, we really want to think about ways that storytelling is far more compelling than data alone. And so at Tellwell, we help brands and causes connect with their audiences through story-based design and film. And that is like a very simple way to distill down what Tellwell does in the approach that we take. We really work with a lot of small businesses, a lot of mission-driven organizations, as well as nonprofits, and really helping them think about they don't necessarily just want to sell someone one more thing. They want to invite people into the story of their organization, of the work that they're doing every single day, and helping people visualize how they might be able to be part of the story that that organization is living out every single day. And so, why story? Well, at Tell we truly believe that story is the most powerful method to introduce someone's organization, to help educate people about what they do. And does someone have a problem? Okay. I just heard an uh-oh, so I got concerned. And so really we believe that storytelling is the most important way that we can help introduce the work that you're doing, to engage people in the work that you're doing, and really remind people why they care about your organization. Because once again, it's not about selling someone one more thing or just getting one more donor for a nonprofit. It's really about the fact that every organization has a story that's worth sharing. And for us to truly engage people in the work we do, we want to invite them into those stories that are memorable, the stories that make them feel alive. And so it really is a tool for helping foster community and also for building empathy and sharing a vision of, the way the world looks in our hopes and dreams. A lot of small businesses, a lot of organizations, they are aiming to improve the world through what they do. And so we want to help them share that story. And so the other piece is that we like to think of data as a skeleton when we're starting to think about the impact of stories. A skeleton, great, we need it. It's structural. Every one of us has one inside our bodies, but story really becomes the heart of what we're doing and what we're sharing. And so stats, they can impress people. They can help us measure. They can also lack context or they can lack meaning when someone's not as familiar with the organization or the work that they do. And stories then help us bring those numbers to life. You might say something like, John is one of, the 1,000 people that Ronald McDonald House helped last year, right? So we can help share that stat, but then we're going to dive into that one story a little bit more to make that come alive. And so we want to make sure that stories can help humanize those organizations and bring a little bit more color and context to the numbers and the impact that they're sharing. Because ultimately, it's stories that are going to help people remember what you do, why you do it, and the impact that you're making. And so, as we jump into a couple of case studies, I brought a couple of the clients that we've worked with for a few years. And Tellwell itself is 10 years old. And so we've had a lot of clients that have been around with us for many years. And really that we love getting to work not only on the strategy, not only on the story, not only on those feel good moments, but also really helping them think about, year over year, how are we using stories and how are we uncovering the next story to tell? And how are we kind of keeping some level of continuity throughout them, but making sure that it doesn't feel the same year after year? So, one of those organizations that we love working with is the Ronald McDonald House Charities. Specifically, we often work with those in the Red River Valley, where we're based here in Fargo Moorhead. And so we worked with them for many years across many things. And so one of the things that they came to us a few years ago as a goal was to help them create a video that could be the centerpiece for their major fundraising event. So every year they host something called the Sweetheart Ball. It's always on the Saturday before a Valentine's Day. And so they've kind of gotten their community, expecting this event, kind of putting it on their calendars. They're kind of having trouble figuring out how do we make that event more interesting, more special. We don't want it to feel like just one more gala where someone gets to get dressed up. And so we had a good core audience, but we really needed to energize that audience and help them kind of come alongside the Ronald McDonald House's mission in a different way. And so if you're not familiar with them, their mission is providing a home away from home for families with hospitalized children. And so for this project, they really said, we think a video could be a great way that could serve, the event, that we can kind of build the event around and really to help people connect on that deeper emotional level rather than just, hearing someone speak from a podium. We want to show a couple families that are experiencing something difficult and also the ways that our organization is helping them. So we took all of that information and we kind of built our approach. And so We really said we want to share the story of a real family that's being served by the Ronald McDonald House Charities. And we want to do this kind of an intimate, kind of short documentary style film because we want to show not only not only, the house and the beautiful space that it is, but we want to show the people who are in it. And so in conversation with Ronald McDonald House, they identified a family who was really willing and excited to do this. They had gotten so much from the Ronald McDonald House over time. And so they said, this would be a great way that we would love to give back. We'd love to share our story. And so we sat down with Clara's family. She's a young girl who was born with Down syndrome and a heart defect. And we wanted to capture their story through candid conversations. So we, of course, weave interviews into this approach because that's important for someone to share in their own words, what their experience is. And so Clara's journey really becomes the heart of this story. And we wanted to illustrate not just the challenges that she's faced, with her different medical conditions and the challenges the family has faced in making sure that they can try to stay connected while Clara is receiving care. We also want to make sure that it felt resilient and hopeful and that we got to see Clara's personality and that we got to, show the unwavering support from the Ronald McDonald House to this family in the ways that the family can connect with volunteers, with staff, and with other families where they're there. And so, just because I don't always trust Zoom, I didn't plan to show you the video today, but I can always drop the links into the Zoom chat if you want to check them out eventually. But one of the things we wanted to do was help kind of give a little bit of context. So in the establishing part of the video, we talk a little bit about Clara and we show her and talk a little bit about her diagnosis, and then we go into making sure that we show the family as well. We show those relationships. We got a chance to kind of show them in their own home, as well as being able to show them when they're coming to visit the Ronald McDonald House. So really trying to take that idea of Ronald McDonald House being the home away from home and really kind of capturing that and showing how we could kind of bring that to life for the audience who's watching. Because most of the folks who are attending the Ronald McDonald House's Sweetheart Ball, they've never stayed in the Ronald McDonald House. They've maybe not had that, but they really deeply care about the mission and they care about the families. And so the result of that video, so, we can talk about all these like fun, great, feel good moments with the video, but the result was that the organization was able to raise over $350,000 in just one night. And that absolutely like blew away their fundraising goals from previous years. And so it's really fun to see a family who is willing to share their story. And we know that requires some vulnerability, right? We always have to have families or people who are willing to share their story. And for us, it means we want to take good care of their story and make sure that they also feel very heard and very represented well. But it was a really great way to showcase how a story can create that emotional connection with donors, can create an emotional connection for folks in the room that evening, and really help them understand what they're funding, what their money is going to. And so since we started incorporating, videos, they've continued to be able to raise, funds throughout the year. And this year, their Sweetheart Ball is coming up very soon. And so I reached out to Jaquel, who is their development director, and asked how things were going. And, we've been doing a video with them again this year. And she said, as we've incorporated video and brought this to life, we're selling out. This year, they're on track to sell out their event, and they have their sponsorship filled and their ads filled. And so they're really saying, when people get to come and to see the story of what Ronald McDonald House does, they don't have to just see the outside of this really wonderful building, but they get to see kind of inside the building, inside the lives of the families, that people are really willing to get behind that. And so for us, this isn't just one video that the Ronald McDonald House, hired us to create and to work with them on. For them, it's turning into real dollars and real impact, as well as, they have these videos then to share with the families who are potentially coming to the Ronald McDonald House and being able to have them kind of see a little bit into what might it be like for my family to stay here? What might be, what might we experience while we're here? And so it's really fun to see that purpose expand beyond just a fundraising goal that the Ronald McDonald House has, but to also help them have a repository of videos that they can show and that can help reduce the ambiguity for someone who's, going through a very difficult time as their kids might be, needing hospitalization or different treatments. And so for us, this has been a really great client to work with. And you might think, well, it's easy when you have a nonprofit client. They have great feel-good stories. They have a really clear mission. And so we like to bring story to other organizations as well. So before I move on, though, if there's any questions right off the bat, I'm always happy to pause to ask them in the moment if anyone does. All right, great. We'll move on. Save them up. We can always chat at the end. So, like I said, it's easy to take a nonprofit client and to find a story within their organization and tell that and know that you're telling it to donors and be able to do that. And so, we love to bring story, though, also to small businesses or to other organizations. And so, this is another client of Tellwell's for many years now. It's called Interbell, and they are actually based out of Montana. If you're familiar at all with Montana and you've heard of the Tobacco Valley, which maybe you have and maybe you haven't, but it's out kind of in the Kalispell area. And so Interbell was originally a telephone cooperative. And so in my adult life, I've not had a landline. And so, thinking about ways that the Interbell needed to evolve and to grow and to show people in their service area that they aren't just a telephone company anymore. We really wanted to work with them on telling the stories of what Interbell does day in and day out in their communities and be able to help them kind of bring to life some of the work that they do all across Montana and the ways that they serve businesses, the way that they serve residents. And so they, they aren't just a telephone company. They provide internet. They provide lots of technology that people need to communicate, as well as some different state-of-the-art services that businesses are using and things like that. And so, when we were starting to talk with Interbell about some of their goals, they said, "Hey, we really need to connect with our customers across the region, and we want to do it beyond just like trying to sell them a service. We want to really think about this because we care about our communities. We're in kind of a rural area in Montana, and part of the their Montana heritage and their culture was really thinking about, we want to show that we care about people, we have each other's backs. We aren't just here to sell them one more service. We don't want it to feel like there's another add-on, that's the only reason we're reaching out." And they really wanted to think about, how is Interbell integrated into a lot of the communities. And so as we talked with them about some of those goals and some of their desires and the way to really make sure that the story was authentic to Interbell, we worked with them on an approach to really think about ways we could highlight customers, ways that we could highlight Interbell employees, and the ways that we could highlight some of the places in the communities throughout their region through story and really helping situate Interbell as a Montana grown organization, Montana committed organization. They're not trying to expand into more states. They're really committed to their area and their communities. And so we really talked with them about what does that mean as we start to think about stories. And so as we started to think about the stories and what, kind of what did they know about their communities? What did they know about the people that they serve? What do they know about their employees? We want to make sure that the stories weren't just focused on what people do or what they do, what Interbell does, but also on the people that they do it for. Because, as some of them would say, like, I don't love internet service, but I love the connectivity that it brings because I can see, my grandma being able to connect with the grandkids. And so they talked a lot about, what they do it for and their organization's why was so much about connecting people and connecting their rural region to more of the world. And so we talked with them a lot about that as we were working on, finding different stories and being able to tell those. And so we've been telling stories with Interbell now for probably 5 or more years. And we've used a variety of mediums for Interbell as well. And one of these that was really important to them was doing kind of a magazine style newsletter. So it's not a full magazine, it's not 50 pages or anything like that. It's more like a dozen pages, but they really wanted to figure out ways to celebrate the people who are served by Interbell and the employees, the people who make Interbell, and really making sure that we humanized this organization that could feel a little hands off, could feel a little cold, right? As a, internet provider, as a security company, as different technologies, right, that often feel a little less human. They really wanted to be able to show the human side of who Interbell is. And so this gives them a great reason also to reach out to their entire customer base twice a year with no need to sell them any services or anything like that. We're just really highlighting and sharing a story. And so our team at Tellwell works with Interbell to identify, a customer story or a business story and an employee story, and then typically a place that's a part of their region in Montana that they want to highlight, that they want to celebrate. And so it's been really fun for us to learn more and more about, kind of this place that's based in Eureka, Montana, and their whole service area and be able to talk with the people. And it's also fun to see not only how people on the receiving end of the story are, but the people who are interviewed and the people who are invited to share their story, the way that that lights them up, the way that that gets them so excited about Interbell, about either having their services provided by Interbell, for working for Interbell, or even just getting to share something like my 5 favorite hikes in Montana, and those types of things that really are inviting them to share the story. So it's not so much about Interbell as a company. It's really about the people who make Interbell what it is. So this is one way that we've incorporated story into Interbell's work and into all the things that we do with them and how it's really helped them have an opportunity to make those connections that are really meaningful. But they also, because of their ownership structure, they have to have an annual meeting every year. And so a couple of years ago, we started working with Interbell. Instead of helping them build a slide deck that just ran through all the numbers, we actually worked with them to create a short video that incorporates all these things so that when someone sees on screen, that Interbell gave over $80,000 in donations and education funds last year, this introduces then a series of very short kind of stories that highlights the places that received some of that money. So really bringing that stat to life because, I don't know if you've ever sat through an annual meeting that lists off numbers and a lot of data without a lot of heart to it. It can get pretty boring pretty fast and people's eyes can glaze over. And so their executive director and their leadership team really said, would love to think about ways that we can bring this to life, ways that we can think about how to show people the communities that we're in and show these things through our annual report so that people stay engaged. And so that was really our way of saying, story is an engaging tool that can invite people into that story. And as people who are providing, paying for services through Interbell, them seeing Interbell take and turn some of those profits into good for the community is way more fun for them than just a list of numbers. Because $80,000 sounds pretty impressive. But if you have no idea what it went to, it's just a number. And so it's been really fun to work with Interbell. And so a couple of those results that we're seeing here is that their subscribership continues to grow year over year. Um, it's not like we're, tripling and doubling their size. That's not what they want either. They really want to make sure that they're intentional with their growth. And again, they're serving Montana. They're making sure that people all across rural Montana are served. And so really fun to see their subscribership continuing to grow. And then they're also seeing really high employee retention. So they're reporting that employees are feeling celebrated, that they're being retained, that they're reporting high levels of satisfaction by getting to maybe be invited to share their story or maybe see and hear a story of someone that they work with. And so we're really able to use story to not only engage their communities, the people that they're serving, but also their employees. And, a lot of us probably have had staffing challenges over time or at some point in your life where you say, yeah, like, how do I find the people who are committed to doing the work we're doing and want to stay? And how do I help them feel appreciated and celebrated? And so being able to share their employee stories has really been a big piece of that with Interbell. I saw there was a question that popped through in the chat. Is that one you want me to answer now, or is that one you're hoping that I would answer at the end?
I think you can take question. If you see a question in the chat, go ahead and answer it.
Great. So Becky asked if we work with local freelance writers, photographers, and videographers in Montana. So we often travel as the Tellwell team to go capture some of those stories. So we work with organizations all across the country, and so there are times we might hire someone locally if we need. If we need an extra person to do grip or like to assist on a production, that's the type of folks we're typically hiring freelance when we're on location. But most of the time it is Tellwell's team going there and really being part of it and investing in that client relationship. And so that's really fun. We also do, because thanks to technology, we're able to conduct like the pre-interviews for a video before we get there so that someone gets really familiar and comfortable with our team. So we're not just these crazy people coming into their community. So it really allows us to connect ahead of time. So great question, Becky. Yeah. And we're always, open to two freelancers on our team, but a lot of times we're really committed to our team doing a lot of the work because that's the relationship we've built with a lot of our clients is that they get to know us, they get to know our team, and we build that trust, which really makes it a lot easier for people to open up and to share a story. Some people's stories maybe are more vulnerable, like people on a health journey versus someone who's getting interviewed about why they love Montana, so it just really helps us to make sure that we are able to share stories in a really authentic way. Thanks for your question. Anything else before I hop into a third third example. All right. So you also again are like, okay, well, how does this translate? So we've talked a little bit about video, we talked a little bit about writing. Let's talk about the website and how we can really truly also infuse some story into the web world in a way that can help organizations that maybe aren't as top of mind. So a client of ours is Saving Smiles Dentistry. They're based here in Fargo, and in Fargo, it's really competitive in the Google search engine world for how people show up in the search results as dental offices. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but we know that that's true from all of our research and from working with a couple clients. And so when Saving Smiles came to us, they said one of their goals was to improve the search rankings for their business. Because for them, it really drives how many clients or how many patients that they get in the door. So we talked with them a little bit about, what are they currently doing, what's working, what's not, and looking, kind of into their data in the back end of their website. We really came up with the approach that we wanted to share a little bit more story on their website, and so we could improve the SEO. And this isn't just like a way of, inserting all the right catchphrases and words into something just to improve your SEO rankings. We said people don't want to read that on a website, but people do want to get to know. If we can get them to come to your page, we want them to get to know your business and your practice so that someone can make an informed choice about if Saving Smiles is the right place for them. We also did, reconfigure their sitemap a bit to be more intuitive, but kind of lead people through kind of what are their first questions that someone coming to this website might ask themselves? How can we anticipate that and answer it and do it in a thoughtful way? And then we also wanted to incorporate a custom photo library for them. Because sometimes we forget that, a website, as much as it is sort of your welcome mat to the whole world, but you can tell a little bit of a story through it. And to be able to have custom photos can help give people a sense of a visual story. Even if there's not, a perfect story arc to those photos, you can help showcase a little bit more of the story of the organization by doing custom photos. And so, just really briefly here, I grabbed a couple of screenshots from Saving Smiles. And so, we updated their About page to talk a little bit about the history of Saving Smiles and who was running the practice and what's important to them. And then we also worked with them, so there's a couple of photos in here that those are custom, those are from their organization. And we included, team photos, and we included some different pieces so that people could see a little more than just a random website that's a dental office in Fargo, but we also really coach them on sharing their approach to dentistry and thinking of that as a type of story. Even if it's a very short story, really again, kind of helping them think about how do they share more about their organization than simply we're a dental office. And so it was really fun to see the before and after with them as we worked on that. And what are some of the results they're seeing? Well, they've moved up several places in the search rankings, which is leading to more patients and more business for them. And this wasn't a major overhaul of their website. This wasn't, trying to cheat the system with SEO. It was really saying, how do we talk, authentically? How do we share a bit more about your practice and your approach so that if, we can get more people to your website, hopefully also then they're seeing who you are and the way that you operate your practice and wanting to opt in. And so for us, this idea of story really can be infused across all sorts of different platforms, all sorts of different types of mediums, and really thinking about how do we humanize, any kind of organization and help remind people who might be curious about it. There are people driving that business, driving that organization, and so that's one of the ways that we really think about story again as being a powerful tool where we can connect people and we can make sure that it doesn't feel like, some just one more business, that it has that heart. It doesn't have just the data, just the skeleton, just the bare bones of who we are, but we're really bringing that more to life. So when Jill and I talked, she also said if I could run through a quick kind of one of the frameworks that we often use to kind of give you that sense as well. So I'll run through that, and unless there's questions right now that you wanted to ask about any of those clients or those types of things, because next up is my favorite framework.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, going back to the Ronald McDonald House, how do you storyboard your longer form videos? Do you kind of do it on the back end, go get the shots, bring the story together, or do you have a shot list, or how does that look?
Sure, that's a great question. Is it Cam?
That's correct.
Great. Thanks for your question, Cam. Yeah, so a lot of times what we will do with the client is we'll, as they bring up ideas of here's a potential family like the Ronald McDonald House does, and we start to do what we call pre-interviews. And so that's really starting to get a feel for what is this family story so that we can understand their story before we try and capture it on camera. And so, for example, with Clara's family, she has a few different siblings. She's really close with her sister. Clara loves baking, and she loves her pink room. And so, learning those types of things about the family and about the person whose story we were going to showcase helped us really build. Kind of build that shot list, like you mentioned. I'd say a lot of times we don't fully storyboard the story. We don't create the storyline until after we've completed all the interviews, because we don't want to drive the interview in a place that it shouldn't, that they don't want to go. And so we really try to let them lead the interview. But we often, are learning enough about the people's stories so that then we could plan. They're willing to let us come into their home. Let's do some scenes in Claire's bedroom because we know she loves her pink bedroom. At the Ronald McDonald House, you didn't see it in the screenshots I shared, but we also did a scene of them cooking in the kitchen at Ronald McDonald House, and that was backed up kind of in the under or in the audio with someone sharing how there are meals, home cooked meals every day at the Ronald McDonald House. And so as we think about kind of building that, we want to make sure the visual ties in with kind of the overall arc of the story. So we always build that arc from those initial conversations, and we build the shot list from those. But the storyline and exactly how it all comes together really has to be driven in that documentary style, kind of by the interview and by the authentic words that people are really sharing. And so hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, just to follow up real quick, do you produce different length versions of your videos, like a 15-minute, 30-minute, or like in commercials, it would be like a 15, 30, 45?
Yeah. So, for example, for the Ronald McDonald House, that one, because of where it's, intended to be shown, it kind of comes in usually in that like 4 minute, 5 minute mark. But then we'll do social cuts for them so that they can continue to use that video, not just in like one format. So a lot of times we'll do, shorter cuts, but we might do a 60-second, a 30-second, even a 15, so that they can use those to drive people back to the full film through some of their channels. They have a robust newsletter, they have great volunteer base, those different types of things. So the short answer was yes. And then, as we think about other clients and what the purposes of their videos are, it really just depends on kind of the use cases that they might be looking for. So for example, we worked with a local university on some commercials recently. And so those were intended as 30-second broadcast spots. But we also worked with them to say, you're really trying to drive students to your website to apply. So as we thought about that, we created 3 separate 30-second commercials that went out for broadcast, but then we also shot a few extra scenes and then we cut all of the commercials together in what we call the super cut, so that then when someone got to the website, they actually got to see a little bit more than just the 30-second commercial they might have seen on broadcast or the 15 or 7-second cut that they might have seen in like a YouTube or a social ad. And so we always are thinking about, how is this not just only applicable in its one original format, but the ways that we can hopefully get people back to that longer format that, kind of tells the more full story as well. Any other questions at this point? All right. Well, then there'll be plenty of time at the end as well. But I want to share with you one of my favorite frameworks because I think it's really applicable. And so, one of our things that we often share from Tellwell is that the best brands or the best organizations aren't the heroes in their story. They're the smart friends who help you succeed. And that's kind of how we think about ourselves at Tellwell is we're not the heroes in your organization's marketing strategy. We're the helpful friend who hopefully is a little bit smarter than your average bear, and that we are helping you find success. And so we want to think about that as we approach the stories that we're sharing. Who is the center? Who's the hero of the story? And so one of my favorite frameworks to work with is called the hero's journey. One of those kind of ancient things that are kind of baked into a lot of the storytelling we do, but it's really how we use it and how we apply it and the pieces that we pull in that can make it really unique from different clients, from different perspectives, and across a variety of industries, right? The hero's journey framework is actually the one that we used for all three of the case studies I gave you today, but you see how, the end result still can look really authentic and different and unique to them. And so the hero's journey, this is kind of the overall how this looks. Then I'll break down each of these pieces and talk more about them. But we want to think about them as a cohesive story, kind of the map that we're going to lead someone through as we talk about how do we think about the story that we want to tell and what are the important elements of the story. And so, if you've heard of a hero type movie, think of Star Wars or even, think of The Lion King, right? Those you often can kind of identify, oh, who's the hero in that story? Whose story are we telling? But what we often forget is that there's usually a helpful guide in the story as well that's kind of guiding the hero because the hero on their own isn't going to do it. They need the help, they need the support of people around them. And so it's kind of where it's fun to help the organizations that we work with think about not themselves as the hero, but their customer or their donor or the person that they're serving as the hero in the story. So, to run you through this framework real quick, and I do full like workshops on this. So if you're like really curious about it, let's connect after because we can do a deep dive into it. But what we do is we start with helping people think about who are we trying to talk to? And so that's where this idea of a persona comes in. So who are we trying to talk to? Who are we trying to reach? So at Ronald McDonald House, maybe they're trying to reach a donor. Maybe they're trying to reach someone who could help them find a new grant, those different types of things. For Interbell, they're trying to help they're trying to connect with a potential customer, or maybe they're trying to connect with a current customer and just get them to be more loyal. And so we think about who we're trying to connect with first. And then we think about this. It's called the aspirational transformation, which is a very educated way of saying, where are they now and where do we hope to bring them at the end of the story? And so if the Ronald McDonald House is saying, we actually want to try and reach someone who's not a donor yet. And so maybe they don't know much about the Ronald McDonald House and their transformation is now they understand our mission. Or maybe for a different persona, it is someone who's a low-level donor, who's supportive of our mission. Maybe we're trying to get them to come to the house and volunteer more often, right? And so we're thinking always about that piece because that's really important in how we tell the story and the elements we bring together. So, example, Saving Smiles Dentistry, their person might be someone who's looking for dental care but doesn't know about us, going to then the transformation of becoming a patient. So, as we start to build the story, then we want to think about the hero, and that is the main character, and that is actually connected to the persona. And so we ask ourselves, what does our character want? What are they looking for? What are they trying to do? And how can our organization help them get that? And so our character might be I don't know. Could be it could be anyone. So let's keep using our Saving Smiles example here. So our character might want really great dental care. They might want someone who will care about them as a patient, who will help make sure the process isn't painful. Maybe they have a lot of anxiety, around going to the dentist. And so that's where we start to think about all these challenges that the character in our story might have. And so this external challenge maybe is something as simple as there's just so many dentists in Fargo, they're kind of overwhelmed, right? That's a challenge that someone might be facing that we can help them overcome. Maybe they have an internal challenge. Like I mentioned, people sometimes have a fear of the dentist. They might have had bad experiences. And so maybe they're hesitant or they're nervous about it. And then the philosophical challenge, this is one where we often spend a lot more time with our clients, kind of uncovering this. This one can be a little bit needing more massaging or more understanding to really get there. But the philosophical challenge is kind of summed up by like, it's just plain wrong that, a person who's looking for dental care feels overwhelmed by the number of options and feels anxious about picking a dentist because someone like Saving Smiles exists. And we actually care a lot about our patients and we can help them through this process. Right. So we want to start this story and kind of really think about what does our character want? Who are they? What are they trying to do? What problems do they have that we can help them solve? And that's where, the organization that we're working with is usually the guide in the story. So like Luke Skywalker has Yoda who helps him kind of through his journey, the Saving Smiles dentistry people can become the guide to someone who's trying to find a new dental office. And so we always position them with empathy and authority. Empathy is really saying like, why did this organization care about the person that's kind of at the center of the story? So maybe Saving Smiles dentistry folks really care about their patients and they want it to be a painless experience as much as possible. We also want to make sure that we don't just have feelings, we have authority, right? Remember we talked about stories have data and they have feelings. And so we want to say, and Saving Smiles has been in business for more than 40 years, right? The dentists are trained in specialized ways. And so we really make sure that we talk about why the guide is a good guide to this person. So then we want to make sure, as all good marketing does, is that we inspire the person we're trying to talk to take action. And so this is where, again, kind of working with our clients, we talk to them about, do they want a really direct call to action? So for nonprofit, is that, hey, we have things on our Amazon wish list that you could purchase right now? Or is it more of a transitional call to action? Something like, would you be willing to, learn about the volunteer opportunities at the Ronald McDonald House? And so we want to think about, what are we really asking the person that's listening to our story, that's listening to the message to do? And so we craft that really specifically to make sure that we're driving again, kind of back toward that goal that we've established with the client from the outset before we even dive into what the story could be. And so, of course, any good guide knows what's going on and they give the character a plan. And so we want to make sure that we keep this simple. So sometimes that is click and watch this video. Sometimes it's visit our website. Sometimes the call to action, really drives into this plan. And so we want to help people understand, what do I do next? If I like what I'm hearing and I know that you want me to go to the website, what do I do after that? Do I click on this to visit the website? Do I watch the video? Do I fill out a form for you to contact me back? And so really thinking about that as a way to build into the story some of that help and that guidance so that someone can help solve their challenge, solve their problem. And then we want to paint a picture of what beautiful success could look like. And so we want to help people think about, what does it look like if you make this decision that we're offering to you, that we're suggesting in the plan? And so, for example, the amazing things that could happen if you decide to click on Saving Smiles Dentistry and do, a 15-minute call to learn more about our practice, or simply read our website, you could get dental care that meets you where you're at, that helps you reduce your fear of going to the dentist. And maybe it's, an opportunity to share with them that we take different types of insurance and different things like that. So helping them see the end result where they've have gone to the dentist, we've taken care of them, they have beautiful, bright, shiny teeth, right? Or we want to help also remind them that, like, if you don't make this decision, other things could happen. And so sometimes the other thing that could happen is simply you'll be stuck in the cycle of still looking for a dentist, or maybe you'll choose one that you don't love. And so just helping them think about that. We don't always want to dwell a lot on the tragic ending that could be, right? And thinking about that from like a donor perspective, we might say, hey, the beautiful success of contributing to Ronald McDonald House is you can help more families like Claire's stay close while they're doing medical treatment. And the sad ending could be without enough funds, the Ronald McDonald House can't serve all the families that need their help. And so we want to make sure that we're not going too high and too low, kind of finding that medium, but really making sure that we're bringing that idea of the end of the story to life. And so that's kind of how the framework works, is we really think about who needs to be part of this story, who and why is this organization a helpful guide to help this person solve their problem or meet their challenge? How do we help them say, I have the challenge, I know this person could be helpful, what do I do next? And want to remind them of what it could be if they say yes to working with us, or if they choose not to, kind of what is the other potential? And so that's, a lot of those stories that you've heard, that you've read over the years, both in fiction and nonfiction, kind of follow a framework similar to this. And so that's where we find it's really flexible. Even as much as it's a framework, it's not rigid. And that's where it works for so many of our clients in so many contexts. So that is kind of what I had prepared today. Jill, we hit it right on the head, 40 minutes. And so we've got about 20 minutes left for questions, and would love to see if I can answer anything you're curious about.
If anyone has any questions, you can either put them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. And one of the things I wanted to ask Annie, when it comes to gathering the story, finding the story, how do you go about that with your clients? How do you draw those stories out of them to start with?
That's such a great question, and that's really a fun process for us. So we have a process, we like to call it road mapping. Tellwell loves to pretend like we're always on a road trip, because road trips always lead to great stories, I like to think. And so we have a road mapping process that really helps us start with what is the goal, right? And that's kind of where as when I was sharing those case studies, we always start with the goal first. And then we start to ask some questions around, well, where have you seen, this type of story that maybe could move someone from, I don't know very much about this organization, to I want to work with them, whether that's I want to purchase your service, or I want to fund your mission, or I want to choose you as my dentist. And so we talk with them a lot about, is there anyone who has made that choice that might be willing to share their story. So, for example, especially in our nonprofit world, it often is, do we want to center the story on a donor or on a person served? And so, kind of as we go and we kind of work through the flow of this road mapping session, we start to uncover those answers. So if it is, we're speaking to the persona of a donor, well, they might be far more moved by the story of someone served, by the organization than they would of another donor who gave money, right? And so I always want to think about that end goal. And then we start to ask, a series of questions that are always very customized to the organization and to that goal, that really helps uncover the story. So, for example, with Interbell, and when we talked about wanting to find a customer story that we could share. We said, is there anyone who's already a big fan of what you do, or is there anyone who's naturally sharing? Because we don't want to force anyone into sharing their story, because you can always tell, right, when someone's been fed a line or something like that, and been like, well, could you just say X, Y, and Z about us? And so we really try to find those authentic stories, and so sometimes that does take us a little bit of brainstorming, and sometimes we'll start with actually 3 or 4 potential stories, and through those pre-interviews sometimes we kind of identify which one is the strongest story or which one is the person most excited to share, that we can draw out the most authentic story. So I feel like that was like a bit of a non-answer to your question, because it depends a little bit on the person and the story, but it always starts with that goal, and then we start to say, the goal is X. Who are the types of people that have the stories that might really resonate, and then how can we start to vet their stories and kind of understand more nuance about them, so that we know who and how to build the framework around.
So you sometimes have more than one character, more than one person you're working with to feel them out. Maybe someone, you get directed to someone and they just aren't talkative. Then if you have another, you could switch gears.
Yeah, and so that's building that trust with the client, and our project management team has really great strategies for reaching out to folks and kind of doing a little bit of a warm handoff from the client, who we're careful to phrase things like, hey, we're starting to explore the story to tell at the Sweetheart Ball next year. The team at Ronald McDonald House has said that you've really you know been at the house a lot in the last year. We're wondering if we could learn more about your story. And so, so we're always careful to not have someone think that you've already been chosen, but to help them understand the process that we're going to go through to kind of get to the final story. Because we never want to get someone excited that their story is going to be shared and then end up selecting someone else. And sometimes it's simply timing or scheduling too that ends up being part of it, in the scheduling and, kind of keeping things on our production timeline and all of that as well. So there's a lot of factors that go into kind of the final piece.
How do you make decisions about when to use video, when to use print, when to use both?
That's a great question too. I'll be honest that sometimes it's driven by the client's budget of what they have available to invest in. And so that's where oftentimes we'll strategize with them kind of around the goal and around where the people are that they need and want to share their message with, and kind of figure out what's the right strategy um, for reaching them. I would say a lot of times if we have something that's highly visual, and that, we really are trying to draw a lot of emotion. So, for example, something like a video to show at a fundraising gala, we know that video is going to be way stronger in helping people because we can set the tone with, the way that the screen is, kind of bringing you through. We're used to watching movies that tell us stories. And so, think about the ways that you can play with audio and video, and the sights and the sounds that we can bring into video can really drive immediate action. And so that's where like a video is oftentimes what we'll strategize with, when the goal really is we want to help people give in the moment, help people feel like they're part of the mission. For some of those things that's a little more, hey, we just want to have a touch base with with our supporters or our customers. You might say, hey, do you have a regular way that you already are reaching out to them? Sometimes they have an email newsletter, sometimes they have a printed newsletter, sometimes they have, different social media presences. And so oftentimes, if we're not trying to do a really direct call to action, that transitional call to action that I showed in the framework can be really useful for some of those more asynchronous types of things. We can still bring a story to life, and we can do that through photos and we can do that through words, but it just feels a little different than a video, which can help you have that more direct, more immediate, more kind of urgent sense of wanting to act or wanting to support. And then I think it really helps too when you have different spaces and places that you're trying to bring to life. So, for example, with Interbell, they serve a wide range of people all across Montana. And so, helping someone see the different spaces and places, and the vastness of Montana compared, and in addition to the vastness of the service area that Interbell covers, those visuals in a video are really fun, to help bring that sense of inner bell kind of situated in Montana and really show the landscape and help people feel immersed in it in a video in a way that, just looking at a picture on a screen doesn't quite do the same. So it's really fun. Our team has a few different drone pilots and those types of things. We're able to get a lot of really cool footage, that can help really establish that sense of place, which I think can be really impactful in videos, especially. Jill's got great questions, but I bet there's a few others in the audience too. If you're shy, you can always type it in the chat.
While we're waiting, could you talk a little bit about the training that you do? How
Sure.
that's available if somebody's interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a variety of coaching and consulting on messaging. So a lot of times we have folks who say, I just am having a hard time distilling down, what does my organization do? Or how do we really kind of keep ourselves on track when it comes to messaging? So, I will do workshops that go far more in depth and actually like go into your organization's hero's journey. So that's usually about a 2 to 3 hour workshop, that we'll do. That at the end of it, you get a pretty cool. We like to call it like the first draft of your brand story, that helps speak to that type of person, and then we train you how to use that framework. So you don't necessarily need us every time you want to use it, but we teach you, how to use it on one or two of your personas because most of us don't have just one customer. We have a wide variety of people we're trying to reach, and so kind of equipping you with that tool to use it time and again is really fun for me. That's one of the workshops that we do. We also have a communication made simple training that we do. That's through the Business Made Simple coaching certification through Donald Miller, if you're familiar with him and his work. And so that really helps us take really complex messages, whether they're internal or external messages, and helps you kind of hone in on like what are the most important parts and how do we structure this so that it's clear and people can understand it. And again, kind of walks us through a framework that you can use again and again. We really are big believers in training you how to use the tools that we often use so that you are equipped to use them without us, and being able to use that tool for anything that actually, whether it's you're trying to write an internal email to share a change with your organization, or maybe there's something you have that's great and you want to celebrate it. There's so many ways that we can use those frameworks. And again, it's why the frameworks concept is really important. We also have a marketing made simple workshop that we can do, and that really, similar concept to the communication made simple, but this one is much more about a marketing strategy and helping us really think about what are the ways that we want to drive the marketing strategy forward for your organization. And so with that one, you'll usually leave with some recommendations from us. And then again, knowledge on how to use the framework to say, okay, if I know the like message that I want, here's how I run it through kind of a system or a series of questions to understand what are the best places for that message. How in depth do we go? How do we build the message itself? And so those are three workshops that probably are really relevant to this group. We also do a few other different types of workshops. Joe mentioned in my intro, I spent many years working in education, and so have different workshops that we do that are a little bit more about helping teams work together, and helping kind of uncover our internal communication between our team and figuring out, is there something that we can do to improve that? Is there something that's kind of amiss, that's awry? And so those are kind of like bonus ones that we often do just for our clients as we, like I said, we really get to know our clients, build strong relationships with them. And so, but always open to chatting with folks who might say, we're just having an internal communication struggle. We can't figure out why we're not on the same page. And so kind of diving in with you and figuring out what are some of the challenges that you're facing and how can we unlock some of those and help get you unstuck, is sort of marketing adjacent. Because often if we have people who, internally our communication isn't good, it's really hard to get those clear, concise messages out to the world and to help people feel like the stories and the things that we're sharing about our organization resonate if they can tell there's internal turmoil. And so those are four of the workshops that I do often with clients, as well as just folks who are looking for some new knowledge, some new frameworks to apply to their own businesses or their own organizations.
There is another question in the chat from Brandon, and it asks, how does Tellwell utilize AI tools in your creative process?
Yeah, so Bring, great question. So I think this is something where we know that AI is very prevalent in the world, and so we're really trying to think about how does it get used responsibly, as well as how do we not just let it do work for us. And so I'll just be honest that we've been playing around with this. We've been kind of training some tools to just kind of see how this could help us, maybe more with our internal stuff than we are doing for client work. And so, Tellwell has Tellwell the podcast that we just started producing at the end of last year. And so we've been playing around with, some of our own types of projects and kind of experimenting with how can AI be supportive to this. Also, like I said, kind of balancing the ethics of that. What does that look like? And so Max, who's our chief storyteller and the founder of Tellwell, has been trying to train it on his voice and saying, hey, here's a podcast episode that I recorded. With a guest, can you just give me a summary of it? And, can you highlight the three most important points? And so it's just kind of a fun way for us to check and see what are we pulling out of an episode like that compared to what is AI thinking the most interesting parts of it are. And so we're kind of playing around with some of the tools to really think about how you can train an AI on different voice or on different methods or those types of things to kind of supplement or help us. But we're really in the space where we're playing with it for ourselves right now and not taking that out, and applying it to client work. I think there's a lot of really cool opportunities, but again, it's balancing the ethics of that and also, the impacts of AI on the environment and on the world. And so really, I think we haven't arrived at like a perfect conclusion yet, but I think what we know is if we aren't paying attention, other people will be and they'll pass us by. So we're really trying to stay kind of up to date on what is it useful for? What is it helpful in? And how do we balance that with the, very true, authentic human stories that we're aiming to tell? What else are you curious about? We got a few more minutes. I could go back to my teaching days and just start calling on people. I can see all your names on the chat. Oh, Karen has a question. How do you start with strategy with your clients versus people jumping in with, we need a fun video? I love that you asked that because there are many times when we have people say, we think we need a video. And that's where we start to ask a lot of questions about like, well, what about a video or what type of video or what are you trying to do again? Kind of going back to that idea of often people need a little help clarifying their goal and what they're trying to do. And so that's where we ask a lot of questions and really try to treat that as the introduction, where someone might say, we know we need something, but maybe it isn't actually a video at the end of the day. And so sometimes it is trying to convince clients to go on a little bit of a journey with us. Sometimes people do know, hey, we need a broadcast commercial because that's something that's already built into their marketing plan. And from there, we can say, great, let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish with it. But sometimes we do get people who simply say, we think we need a video. And then you start to ask, well, tell me why you need a video. What do you think a video can do for you? And so that's how we sometimes kind of get them to zoom back out with us and really make sure that a video is the answer to the question of like, is this the right strategy? Is this the right way to deliver your message? Because we don't ever want to produce work that actually isn't going to do the thing that people are hoping to do with their marketing and their messages. So great question, and it happens a lot. And so we've gotten really good at helping people zoom back out. Brooke asked, "What's my favorite project that I've gotten to work on?" Oh, that's a great question. We get to work on a lot of really fun, meaningful nonprofit stories, but I think for me, the one that has been most fun is, so I spent many years working at MSUM. And so because of that, I got to work with them on identifying some of the ideas around the videos that we produced for them this fall that turned into broadcast commercials. And so for me, it was really fun to take some really intimate knowledge that I happened to have from, spending many years working at at an organization that then became a client of Tellwell's. And so it was fun to be able to have some of those relationships or know a little bit more of the nuance of some of the spaces and places on campus and be able to feel like I was able to still stay connected to a place that I really deeply care about. And, I just don't work anymore. I still love MSUM. I still love the Dragons. And so that one was really fun for me personally. I get a lot of joy of working with students. And so getting to see those students that were featured in the commercials talk about how much they love MSUM and really like bring their energy to those commercials, where even though they were delivering lines, it wasn't such a documentary style commercial or anything like that. But being able to like run the scripts by them and ask them if it felt authentic and true to them and true to their experience was really cool. And so really fun to give. One of the students is actually a film production major. And so he was really excited to see the whole process of creating a commercial start to finish and be the actor in it. And so I think just some of those things that you don't get with every project, a lot of the intangibles were really fun for me on that particular one. Thanks for the question.
And we are about out of time, so if anybody has a last question, get it in quick. Otherwise, we want to thank you, Annie. It was great information. We appreciate you sharing it with us.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And I mean this when I say I really do love connecting with people. So I'm one of the few Annie Woods on LinkedIn if you want to find me. Otherwise, I'll drop my email in the chat here, just Annie@WeTellWell.com. Very easy to find me. Would love to connect if you have any questions or if you just love nerding out about messaging and marketing and frameworks. I'm your gal. So thanks so much for having me today. I hope you all get to enjoy a wonderful lunch while you listen to me go on and on about how much I love working with our clients and sharing their stories.